the full council meeting in a couple of minutes and go right into items 3 and 4 are gifts that are on the consent calendar. Do you want to move those, Tim?
I will move them.
And I'll second that. Is there any further discussion? Any updates on any?
None.
None. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Authorization to apply for 2020 State Emergency Management Performance Grant. That's also on the consent calendar, but I just wanted to pull it out. Is there anything special with that? Let me take a look.
We apply for this pretty much every year. And this one, there are two tonight. One's a separate MOA, both related to emergency management, emergency response. But this is the EMPG grant application that funds in part our emergency management budget, as well as part of the emergency management director, Jack Kasner's stipend is tied to this. So that is the nuts and bolts of the EMPG grant.
Is that generally a fixed amount, Sean?
It is, yeah. I want to say, and it's not in the application
No,
itself.
I know.
think it's around $14,000, I think, if I recall.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
And is that the group that we get some equipment to share from occasionally if there's something we need, or is that a different?
Yeah, so it's all, I think, part and parcel of the same division within the state agency, but they are two separate actions, and some of it's a little belt and suspenders, but yes, it is separate, but it is related at the same time. This is a separate direct grant funding. The other one is really an MOA that we'll talk about later. That's part of the Region 2's grant application that they get an appropriation every year on behalf of the 30 towns. And that's where the shared equipment comes from. And the MOA basically says, we'll house our share of it. We'll do our part to keep some of the regional assets here and in good order. So they are separate, but also related.
Okay. Tim, do you want to move that?
Move consent, yes.
All right. I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Jitney bus. This is just dues. That's pretty straightforward. Tim, do you want to move that?
Sure, I'll move that.
I'll second it. Are there any questions or expansion of dialogue on this? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I will ask what a jitney fund is. It's always been curious to me. It seems like an old expression in a modern time. You can tell me in council. The regular meeting will be fine.
All right, well, I'll have to find out.
Tell us all. It'll all be very exciting.
Okay, I'll have to find out what the answer is.
I still call it that. I guess I'm old.
No, it's written there for you to read. No problem.
Yeah. Authorization to accept $60,112 from the RWA in lieu of permanent patching of a portion of Brentwood and Ridgewood. I'll
move that.
And I'll second that. This is continuing our program with the RWA when they do a trench for some upgrades or increase in pipes. We don't want just a patch in the road if we can help it. And if we know the road needs some work to be done, we tie in their funds with ours to get a curb to curb repaving of the road. Is that right?
That is exactly right.
All right. Any questions? No, since you already voted, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, passes unanimous. The next two is a discussion and action regarding budget transfers and increase in the pool appropriation. They're really both related. Can we move those together? Tim, do you want to do that?
I will move those together.
All right, I'll second that. They're pretty self-explanatory. This is all an outgrowth of the end of the fiscal year and the balancing of the books, and nothing really unexpected when we adopted the budget back in end of May, but it does provide for a little more fund balance than we had expected, which is nice because we just spent a good chunk of that on the potential brush pickup because of the storm. So it's nice that we had it.
Maybe in a way, a summary, I'll just say that, in general, the overages in the various departments were rather minimal, with the exception of the Parks and Recreation Department, and that was all about the need to increase their full subsidy, which is in the other resolution that you had mentioned for discussion tonight. And then also COVID expenses total approximately $135,000. Those obviously weren't budgeted for. you know, that's the bulk of what we have here tonight in the way
Okay.
of overages.
Are those COVID expenses something that we're hoping to get some
That's,
reimbursement
that's
on?
something we're hoping to get reimbursed for. So, you know, if we take that out of the equation, actually, I'm quite optimistic that we'll get full reimbursement for that 135.
Yeah. Okay, very good. All right. Tim, you ready? You all set? Any other
I'm-
questions?
I'm
right.
all set.
All right, items 8 and 9, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And the last item on the agenda is discussion and possible action approval of appropriation of $28,600 from the Peck Jones Fund to enhance the availability of quality reading materials in classrooms and school libraries. We have some last minute update of the balance in the fund, and I know there's a council directive from 2012, I believe it is, that limits it to 4%. And so, Vin, do you want to just give the update on that?
Sure. So the balance that we got the update on is the balance in the fund is $683,694. And if you take 4% of that, it's $27,348. So the request to the council is too high right now. And I think that we just had a mix up on our end. It should have been 26.8, I think is what should have happened. So what I would like to do, if it's okay with the budget committee and the council, is change the request to $27,000 so that it can pass tonight. And then, you know, I'll update the board and we'll make the appropriate expenditure adjustment. But I do apologize that this did come up at last minute. I was looking at it and checked on the balance and found that we had asked for a little too much.
Well, I think that's fine, Vin, and I think it's important that the education department catch a math error. So I think that's excellent.
I appreciate that, Tim. Would have been nice to catch it earlier, but we
Right.
didn't catch it.
Now, again, I know we're in session and I know you're spending your money on what you're spending your money on, but it seems like it's heavily weighted towards something I've never seen before. I have no problem with it, but was there some pressure to spend some money on race-related materials in this age of COVID and craziness going on all over the country?
I think it's a contemporary issue for education. And so that was the focus that, you know, curriculum thought that would be the best use of Peck Jones this year, Tim.
How deeply did curriculum dig into the contents of the books? Do you know? I mean, I think it's important, Vin. I don't have a problem with this, except I have a problem with it all at once. Like we've never done anything about this.
Yeah, I hear you, Tim. And it would obviously it came through curriculum committee and then up to the Board of Ed. And, you know, honestly, I didn't stay focused on the details of the curriculum content.
That's fine. I think it's fair. I just think that's, you know, it's the way things are. And I guess we just go with the flow and gosh darn it, I object to some of it. That's all. Thank you.
Is it the similar pattern every year?
You know, it's been a diverse number of things that we've requested. Certainly some of it has been technology. We've purchased Chromebooks for a couple of years. We also funded partial replacement of the Cheshire High School band uniforms. We did the World Language Lab at Cheshire High School with Peck Jones funds. In the past, we've used it to purchase equipment for the Chapman Science Room. You know, one of the more unusual purchases was Star Lab, which is an inflatable planetarium that's still in use, and that purchase was back in 2009. So it's been a diverse set of educational enhancements we've been able to use with the Peck Jones Fund. And by the way, the fund's been in existence since 1945.
Yeah.
So it's been serving us well for a lot of years.
Right.
Yeah, it has. You mentioned Chromebooks. Are we set with Chromebooks? Because so much of the education is going to be remote still, even though the schools will be open somewhat, they'll be remote somewhat as well. Do we still have a need for more students to get books, or?
We were able to purchase Chromebooks for all students, you know, so we're 1-to-1 in the event that we need to go remote. Students won't all be taking those home, you know, grades 6 down. The Chromebooks are in the classroom. They'll stay in the classroom. But if we do go remote, there is a Chromebook for every student. And, the only grade that isn't Chromebook is K and first grade. They do have iPads as an alternative.
Okay,
But yes, we are set,
okay.
to go remote.
It's excellent.
All right, thank you. Tim, do you want to put a motion on the floor to move this to the council?
I will be happy to move the funding of $27,000 for council consideration.
And I'll
for
second
Peck
that.
Jones Fund.
I'll second that. Is there further discussion? Since you're ready to vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, Tim and I passes unanimously of the Budget Committee, and we are now at adjournment. It is.
I so move.
I'll second that. All those in favor signify by
Aye.
saying aye. Aye, passes unanimous. The Budget Committee is adjourned.
Order 7 p.m. Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. Mr. Kimball, roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Bowery,
Present?
Mr. Jinks, Ms. Nichols,
Here.
Chairman Orris,
Here.
Ms. Pavano,
Here.
Mr. Slocum,
Present.
Mr. Talbot,
Here.
Mr. Veliver,
Here.
and Mr. Walsh.
Here.
You have a quorum of the council.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all for being here tonight. The first item is our executive session, which we're going to move to the end of the meeting. There's only one item, and Tim, I'd ask if at the end, if you don't mind taking over. I think the only item is an item that I will not be allowed to partake in. So when we get to that point, I'd ask if you can take the meeting from there. So thank you, Mr. Slocum.
Happy to do
We'll
so.
move on to public communications, number 4. Mr. Kimball, do we have any public communications?
All right, one second, just looking one more time in the comments section. We do not have any comments submitted.
Okay, and we do have a few letters, but the letters will be read later in the agenda when it calls for letters to the council. So just for people who are wondering. And we'll move on to approval of minutes of the public hearing and regular meeting of July 14, 2020, with the changes that were provided in our package. I think you saw it, that it changed the time from 6:30 to 7 p.m., including special meetings of July 23rd, 28, and 30, 2020, and the public hearing of July 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Second, Ms. Pavano. Thank you. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. The motion passed unanimously to those that are here. We'll move on to number 6, consent calendar. Mr. Barry.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 081820-1. Be it resolved that the town council approves the consent calendar for August 18, 2020 as follows. Would you like me to read them or summarize?
No, I don't think so. I think there's
Okay.
a whole number of them, and as always, well, there's,
Very generous.
yeah, there are people who are always very generous with us, so we thank them
Yep.
for their donations. We need a second at this point.
We do.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Appreciate that. Any further comment, Mr. Bowery?
No, again, like you said, generous gifts, and then a grant that we're applying for our emergency management service, and some Jitney bus funds for dues with the senior bus.
Okay, great. So then we'll move on. There's no old business. We'll move on to new business. 9A, discussion and possible approval of award of a construction contract for the boiler replacement at fire headquarters.
Mr.
Annex
Chairman,
to save
Mr.
more
Chairman.
Cooling and heating in the amount of
As-
$55,800. Mr. Slocum?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, I don't think we actually took a vote on the consent calendar.
Thank God,
You in a
Dave.
hurry?
You know, I gotta tell you, my apologies to everybody. I don't know if anyone else is struggling with Zoom, but I'm certainly starting to struggle with this. And I want to apologize to the public because, you know, I think we were all hoping to be in person
Yes.
this month. And unfortunately, due to back order of microphones, we were unable to do it. But I want to assure the public that we're doing our best to get back in action live. I think we best represent them when we do so. And this is just another indication of some of the issues I'm having with Zoom. So thank you, Dave. You're right. We did not vote. So unless there's any questions or comments, I'll call for a vote on the item that I missed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. They're here. Thank you, guys. I think now I can move on to 9A, again, which is discussion and possible approval of the award of a construction contract for the boiler replacement at Fire Headquarters Annex to save more cooling and heating in the amount of $55,800. Now, Mr. Slocum, I think we're finally to you.
Well, I have to say, Rob, I was tempted to vote against consent, but I went with it anyway. So with it, be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 081820-2. Be it resolved, the town council approves the award for the fire headquarters annex boiler replacement capital project to save more cooling and heating for $55,800.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum?
Bottom line is, this is the type of thing that has to be done every 100 years. Well, not quite every 100, but we had to replace the boiler at fire headquarters. The recommendation was to go not for the lowest bidder, but very close to the low bid. We saved more at $55,800. Basically, the town and PBC was making the recommendation based on a recent experience with their good work on another project. So with that, I'm certainly happy to endorse recommendation of this expenditure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slocum. Are there any questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Walsh?
Just had a quick question, because I just saw that the annex, we didn't have enough funding for the annex. Is that something that is going to need to be done in the next year or so, or is that, and how much more would that be?
Good evening. This boiler is for the annex. So
What is for the annex?
Yeah, we replaced the ones. in the
That's what I
fire.
thought.
Oh, okay. I was confused on that. Okay, so I thought it was, okay, so it is for the annex. Okay.
Correct. And this is capital appropriation that was just passed this spring. And
Okay.
the balance of it will be used to design the boilers at the police department for future years, a couple of years out, hopefully.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Those that are here, thank you very much. We will now move on to 9B, authorization to accept $60,112 from the Regional Water Authority in lieu of permanent patching a portion of Brentwood Drive and Ridgecrest Drive. Mr. Barwi.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 081820-3. Be it resolved that the town council approves the agreement with the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for the payment of $60,112 to the town of Cheshire in lieu of permanent patching of Brentwood Drive and Ridgecrest Drive necessary due to the RWA upgrades to water mains on portions of said streets. And be it further resolved that the town council accepts this $60,112 payment from the RWA and appropriates it to the special revenue fund for road repaving.
Thank you, Mr. Barwi. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Mr. Barwi.
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee earlier reviewed this item and recommends it. I will note that of the 16 towns that the RWA serves with water, this is one of only 1 or 2 towns that the RWA allows this program to happen, where they won't patch the cut in the street and the pit that was dug in order to upgrade, but would rather let the town, if they would like, let the town use that so that the town can do the road from curb to curb in a more efficient manner because they're doing other roads with it at the same time, or other portions of roads. So it's great for the town of Cheshire because the town of Cheshire can have curb to curb done with the road rather than have a trench that eventually is going to sink because they all do. So this is a great way for the town of Cheshire to have better roads and our citizens have a better service from their government.
Thank you, Mr. Barwi. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none. Mr. Nowotny, I see you in the back there, I think. And I just want to thank you guys. And it's great that the Regional Water Authority appreciates our role here and allows us to, is willing to work with us on this. It does provide for a better product for our residents so that we don't have the patching, if you will, particularly in streets that we may be doing soon. It'd be kind of a waste to spend that kind of $60,000 in this case to patch when we're going to redo it. We can better utilize those $60,000, as Mr. Barwi said, to go curb to curb. So from our perspective, we really think this is a big benefit to the community here. And I want the community to know we don't just take that money and drop it into some, general fund account to be used elsewhere. This money is used exactly where it needs to be used for the paving of the streets, and it's done in a methodical way through our rating system. Mr. Nowotny, is there anything you'd like to expand on that?
Not very much, Chairman Orse. Mr. Barwi said it very well, and thanks for the compliment on the other end. I'll pass it on to the folks that deserve it. But these roads will be paved curb to curb this fall, hopefully, which will be a much better job. And we try to do this on roads that are well past their prime, if you will, like these 2 roads are. You can see on the rating system, they're in the high 60s, low 70s. If it was a brand new road, the good news is that our robust program for patching roads would force the utilities to do much more paving, thereby helping the town and the residents by getting a better job. But when roads are kind of past their prime, they're allowed to just pave the trench. And in this case, we can, with our economies of scale, as Mr. Barwi said, we can pave these roads completely for that 1,200 feet or whatever it is, and for not a lot of money, and do a much better job and get a longer life out of them for sure.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Nowotny. And I think it's important the public understand what we're doing here with those funds. It could be misinterpreted without some explanation. So thank you all. With that, I guess I'll call for a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously of those that are here. We're going to move on to 9C, authorization to apply for a matching steep grant for sidewalks and ramps. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 081820-4. Be it resolved that the town council authorizes the application for a matching 2020 Connecticut Steep Grant in the amount of $128,205 for sidewalk and accessibility ramp upgrades along Highland Avenue and Curve Hill Road. And be it further resolved that the town authorizes town manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all documents and agreements necessary to obtain and accept this said grant. And be it further resolved, the town council accepts and appropriates said grant funding and appropriates $121,750 for the town's matching portion of this approximately $250,000 project.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Walsh?
Well, this is the Small Town Economic Assistance Program, which it's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of to improve our sidewalks and especially the handicap ramps. This is in my neighborhood, so I'm well aware of that corner, and it's we have a lot of kids who are walkers to Chapman who go down that way, and the asphalt sidewalk that starts at Curve Hill and goes up along the prison. We've had numerous people complain about the how it's pitted and everything else. So I think this is a great start to hopefully repair that sidewalk as well. And I think maybe George can hopefully give us a little bit more information about how far down that sidewalk might get done with this grant.
Sure. Sure. This, again, this is a great program. It's if it works out for us, it's about a 50% reduction in the cost of the work we plan to do by the state, offsetting the other half of that $128,000 grant. Again, if it's awarded, which would be good. But I know this came up in the spring. Chairman Orris, Councilman Walsh, and several others contacted me about folks complaining about that section of sidewalk out there to the council. And it certainly, we did some patching in the spring, and we looked at the costs involved because we had it on our list for our routine sidewalk program at that point. And the costs are staggering, as you can see. It's $250,000 to go about 538 feet up Highland Avenue from the corner of Curve Hill up Highland Avenue, and another couple hundred feet up Curve Hill. So it's not a very long amount of sidewalk for the amount of money. But unfortunately, as Mr. Walsh just said, there's eight handicap ramps that have to be done. It's state code. Anytime you touch a sidewalk, you've got to upgrade the ramps that are on the sidewalk and the ones that are directly adjacent to it or across, the ones it feeds essentially on the other side of the street. So we're into that with pedestrian signals and everything else, and it gets very expensive. It's definitely a worthy candidate. It's just you spend a lot of money in a short distance on these kind of sidewalks. One thing we are looking at, just so the council's aware, and it shouldn't affect the grant award or anything, but if the state happens to pave that section of road before we get the sidewalk done, then the onus is on them to upgrade the handicap ramps and the signals and everything. So our hope is that we can work with the state, and if the state's got that on their list for next year or something, we can kind of work with them and maybe get a longer extension of sidewalk as opposed to doing all the ramp work, because the state would be forced at that point with paving to upgrade the sidewalk portion, the ramp portion. So it's a little bit of a game of cat and mouse here, but we're going to definitely take that to the end and find out when they plan to pave that road, because if it's anytime soon, the money can be spent a lot better to elongate the sidewalk run for sure.
Hey, George,
Thank you, Mr. Watney. Mr. Walsh?
just one quick question. How far down do you think that will go? Are you going to go all the way to Jarvis? Is that what your hope is with that?
No, unfortunately, not even close.
Okay.
We'll get a little bit into the prison property, maybe 100 feet or something like that. Something past that power line that crosses there.
Okay.
And, but it's unfortunately just not going to take us all the way we'd like to go, unless, again, if the state does all that intersection work with the handicap ramps, we could run much further. We could probably get down to the driveway or something.
Thank you.
Mr. Slocum?
In terms of even getting just a little past, the institution that's on the hill there, the nursing home, we're probably still safeguarding a lot of our pedestrian traffic, or am I mistaken? Is that taking us past Chapman or where they would cross?
Yeah, correct. They would cross at Country Club generally. So Kerrville and Country Club, that intersection, I think most pedestrians for Chapman would cross there.
So in that regard, from a public safety standpoint, we're at least in good shape.
Correct.
And then beyond that, should we not get the grant, because everything is not steeped in steep grants, this would probably be a candidate for capital next year, I would think, because I don't think we should, we should put it in our minds if we don't get this grant, which is, I suppose, reasonable to expect we might not. Correct me if I'm wrong. We really have to put this on the capital look, Sean.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Thanks.
correct. Certainly, it's on the, it's going to be a target that we have to address one way or the other. I'm optimistic that this is a good candidate, not only, in front of, or at least adjacent to the state property there. I think it checks a lot of boxes for a steep grant approval, and the ADA acts, the accessibility improvements and whatnot. But as folks will recall, in normal years, when we used to be able to count on steep grants, they were capped at $500,000. These are now, we were a little surprised to see that it's only $128,000 cap. So, but it's a sign of the times, I suppose. But it used to be we'd get a little more as we use steep grants, I believe, here in town for West Main improvements and a lot of other stuff in the past. So we'll do it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Kimmel. Any other questions or comments from members of the council on this matter? Seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Or those that are here, thank you. Going to move on to 9D, discussion of possible approval of a multi-year Munis contract. Ms. Pavano?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 081820-5. Be it resolved that the town council approves the 3-year contract with Tyler Technologies for the town's financial management software program and work.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second. I'll
Thank you,
second.
Ms. Nichols. Ms. Pavano?
Yes, this is a 3-year software contract for $257,045, which includes the implementation costs and maintenance. This initiative was predicated based on the analysis that included hardware and energy costs, administrative efficiencies, and enhanced data storage and security. The town hall has been on a data server, and this would bring us to the 21st century and be much more secure for our personnel files, vendors, general lenders, and banking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Are there any questions or comments from members of the council on this? Seeing none, and it's also accurate, Sean, that the Board of Ed is using the same firm for the same reason, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and Tyler
We'll be
Technologies.
sinking or swimming together, I guess, on this.
We will be, and we've been with Munis, which is the common name for this software package owned by Tyler Technologies for many years here in town. It's been a good service platform for us for all of our accounting, and basically.
Hi, Gret.
Sorry. And we'll be continuing with them. It's really no change other than, as Ms. Pavano said, moving from a server-based, locally hosted data storage system to a cloud-based and more secure system that way. So
Right.
that's the large change here.
Thank you, Sean, and I say that facetiously. I know you all on both sides of the street have vetted this well, and I'm very confident that we'll make a good decision tonight. So if I don't see any other questions or comments on this matter, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, those that are here. We're going to move on to 9E, discussion of possible action regarding fiscal year 1920 budget transfers. Mr. Barwick.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 081820-6. Be it resolved that the town council approves budget transfers as presented and attached for the fiscal year 19-20 general operating budget.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barwick. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Barwick.
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee reviewed this earlier, and there are 18 recommended transfers as we get ready to close out fiscal year 20 from June 30. There are always some changes and adjustments, and 18 departments needed some adjustments to be done. None of them significant in the scope of $100+ million budget, but most of the $246,000 that is being transferred to cover accounts and from accounts that had balances were for COVID expenses, much of which we do expect to get reimbursed at a later date. So really, kudos to staff for keeping transfers to very, very small, tiny, like 0.1% of the overall budget. I think their management and stewardship of our finances is top notch.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. And I think it would, we certainly should mention, it's my understanding that our surplus is about $300,000 more than at the time we adopted our budget. So, good news. This is pretty standard stuff for us to be making these transfers. And so the public knows our surplus is even a bit bigger than we had hoped. And kudos to Jim and your staff and all the department heads and Sean, who worked well to tighten your belt during these tough times. So thank you all. Any other questions or comments from members of the council on this matter? Seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously, or those that are here. Thank you. We're going to move on to 9F, discussion and possible action regarding the increase to pool appropriation. Mr. Barry.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 081820-7. Be it resolved that the Town Council allocates an additional $130,000 from the Recreation Department swimming pool account 10365-5710 line item to the fiscal year 20 Community Pool Operating Budget General Fund Subsidy.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Do we have a second?
Second. I
Ms.
will.
Nichols, thank you. Mr. Barry.
Mr. Chairman, again, this is to close out the books and to balance. And it should be noted that because of COVID, the pool was closed for a significant amount of time and a $210,000 less in revenue than was realistically expected. Yet we're only needing to cover by $130,000 due to proper stewardship and management of the pool and the expenses related to it. So kudos that we were able to keep this to as small as it is, a transfer to close out that enterprise or separate fund that we have for the pool.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Any questions from members of the council or comments? Seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Those that are here, thank you. We'll move on to 9G, authorization to execute memorandum of agreement for the fiscal year 2020 State Homeland Security Grant Program. Ms. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 081820-8. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorizes application for the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security Emergency Management Performance Grant. And it is resolved that the Town of Cheshire Town Council may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate. And it is further resolved that Sean Kimball, Town Manager, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the Town of Cheshire and the Town Council, and to do and perform all acts and things which he deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Nichols.
Yeah, and this is basically Sean's responsibility to try and get reimbursement for us for Homeland Security issues. I think, Sean, you can elaborate a little bit more about it, but this is something that he has to submit in order for us to get consideration for projects.
Thank you, Ms.
Sure.
Nichols.
So-
Mr. Kimball?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, you're correct. And basically, one of the any and all documents is the MOA that's attached to this, as referenced in the resolution. In short, this is a program we participated in for many years, over a decade now. Region 2 Emergency Management region encompasses 31 towns. Part of this MOA that we're signing the grant funding that they receive helps purchase regional assets that wouldn't make financial sense for a town to purchase on their own. These are assets that are shared and deployed and amongst the towns as needed. So what we end up doing here is we also have to agree to host some of these pieces of apparatus or equipment from time to time. So this has been a very successful program for the town of Cheshire, and it's the full endorsement of both Chief Kasner as well as Chief Drive and George Nowotny, who have also taken advantage of these pieces of equipment from time to time in prior emergencies, which we've had some. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Any questions or comments from members of the council? Okay, Sean, just quickly, the only question I had is it about 31 towns that make up Region 2?
It is, yeah, that's correct. 30 or 31.
Okay. And
Yeah.
whatever these assets are, or they also can be programs, correct, that we can partake in for training, kind of regional training, if you will. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. And I think part of what comes out of this from time to time are sometimes with little notice opportunities for us to participate in something. And so part of what this resolution does is says that we're kind of all in on that, whether it be a program or a piece of equipment, a purchase, that we're in support and part of the team, so to speak. So, but you're correct. I think, well, I'm not certain. I think there have been times that it's been programs or other variations on that.
So just one more question to follow up, and I know Ms. Nichols, do you want to add
That's
something?
right. No, go ahead. Follow up your
Okay.
question. It's just
No, the only other question I had is, how does the group determine what assets or programs, et cetera, that we ought to be pursuing? Is that something that's done collaboratively? How does that whole process work, Sean? Do you know?
My understanding is certainly there are collaborative discussions amongst the town's representatives. Our emergency management director is also our fire chief, Jack Kasner, who is very engaged with Region 2, and Jake Mankey, the Region 2 coordinator. I've actually visited some of the Region 2 demo events that they've had from time to time. There was one in North Haven last year where they brought a lot of the equipment together, and the towns were able to kind of go and see some of the pieces that they've purchased in the past. But yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of feedback and an ongoing collaboration as to where the needs are. And again, these are often things that it wouldn't make financial sense for a town to purchase on their own. And so it's been a pretty good program for us.
Thank you, Sean. Ms. Nichols, anything?
Yeah, no, it was just a comment from an old English teacher. I wanted to know how they got the title of this group, which was 2 lines that I had to read. That was the Department of Emergency Services, Public Protection and Emergency Management, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like it could be a shorter name. That's all.
It's our state government at work.
Yep, that's it. Went on and on.
Yeah, I hear you. Any other questions or comments from members of the council on this matter? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously, or those that are here. Thank you. 9H, discussion and possible approval of an appropriation, and I believe it's changed to $27,000, correct, Sean? From the Peck Jones Fund
That's
to
correct.
enhance the availability of quality reading materials in classrooms and school libraries. Ms. Pavano.
Yes. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 081820-9. Be it resolved that the town council approves an appropriation of $27,000 from the Peck Jones Fund for enhancement to the availability of quality reading materials in Cheshire Public Schools classrooms and libraries.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Ms. Pavano?
Yes, this was established in 1945 for the estate of Anne E. Peck. This is only to be used for educational purposes, and withdrawals from this fund are limited to earned income. This amount is going to be used for first and second grade books, also middle school at Dodd, materials at relative to race and diversity, and high school enhancing reading materials relative to race and diversity.
Thank you very
Mr.
much,
Chair.
Ms. Pavano. Are there questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I believe that the council in 2012 amended that, so it's not just the interest that can be used now, but I believe it's up to 4% of the fund that can be used. Jim, do you
That's
know?
correct.
Say that again.
And
Oh,
do you-
4%?
Yeah, it's 4% of the fund balance at the end of the year.
And Jim, do you happen to, or could you provide at a later time, what is currently the balance of that fund?
Yeah, I actually have it, Peter. It's $683,693.
And what is do we have an idea of what the interest is on an annual basis?
I could tell you it's a lot lower in the last year just because of the investment environment, but so I'd venture to guess it's probably half of that. We have most of it invested in long-term CDs to try to capture the best rate we can with what we're allowed to invest in, but it's a lot less than 4% right now.
Okay.
Mr. Slocum?
Yeah, I just had a comment more than a question, and it had to do with the curriculum committee's desire to step up the curriculum, I guess, through the access of books that deal with racial education. And I take no issue with that, except that to me, it's a seminar sort of issue. It's this year's case in review. And because of that, I want to be certain that everyone on the curriculum committee of the Board of Education has honestly taken a read of this subject matter. I think it's important that we have racial, what do you call it? Every race is equal. Every education should be equal. So this does not speak to that. I'm just referring to my concern that we're dealing with some kind of knee-jerk reaction that we've been failing past classroom candidates what they should have been taught. We've seen statues taken down. We've seen all kinds of crap, and I'm going to call it that. And I'm not going to, hide my displeasure with that. And I just want to be certain that the Board of Education is really taking its job seriously and looking at what they are putting in front of the students at all levels. That's just my comment. And I believe in America the Beautiful. All people are beautiful, regardless of race, color, and creed. I just want to make sure this isn't some knee-jerk reaction to the crap that's gone on. Thank you for your time.
Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Okay, seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Those that are here, we're going to move on to number 10, Town Manager Report and Communications. Mr. Kimball?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, I'll begin with just a recap of Tropical Storm Isaias, which made landfall in Connecticut on the afternoon of Tuesday, August 4th. By the evening, Eversource was reporting that 11,090 Cheshire customers, or 96%, were without power. 3 days later, on February, there were still 65% across town without power. Majority of these residents were restored late Friday or throughout the day on Saturday, but we still had 1,000 customers out of power on Sunday, some of whom were not restored, as everyone here knows, until Tuesday, August 11th. Last week, town staff held an emergency operations center debrief session to review our town response and performance and discussed opportunities for improvements. Overall, I was pleased with the town's response, the communication messages, and our efforts to push Eversource for more in-town resources throughout the response. A few quick facts and notes of just appreciation, if I could. Our Cheshire Police dispatchers answered 640 911 calls in just 10 hours on Tuesday night as the storm arrived. This does not include many routine line calls that they were receiving. For perspective, this is about the same number that were received in the entire month of July, 654 calls, 911 calls. For a time, all 911 calls from Southington, Bristol, and part of Plainville were coming to our dispatch center due to an AT&T system failure. Public Works crews responded to over 42 roads impacted by trees down on wires and over 60 roads blocked in total. The Cheshire Volunteer Fire Department responded to 113 calls for service, and our Human Services Department created a charging, Wi-Fi, and cooling center at Highland School within 24 hours of the storm arriving. Over 600 residents visited the center over the week. Special thank you to our town employees who went above and beyond, including Michelle Picarello, Fatima Youssef, Vicky Pagan, Stephen Skibicki, and Fire Chief Jack Kasner. Additional thank you to Cheshire Public Schools staff, including Vin Massiano, Rich Clavette, Mike Papa, and Bob Quinn, and the other BOE maintenance staff for their assistance in getting the center ready and available so rapidly with a variety of very unique COVID-19 considerations. And I also just want to again thank our town employees who assisted, all of our town employees who assisted in the storm response, but in particular our police, our fire, DPW, Board of Ed, and Human Services teams. Again, they're just an incredible group of dedicated individuals, and we're very fortunate to have them working for the town of Cheshire. Following up on the storm, as the council is well aware, following your approval last week, our public works crews have begun curbside brush collection beginning yesterday as part of our ongoing townwide cleanup efforts. The crews are beginning in the south part of town and will make one pass through, making their way north. Brush and branches of 8 inches in diameter or less will be collected. Leaves, grass clippings, bulky waste, bags, and trash will not be picked up. All material must be placed outside on a town or state road. Crews cannot enter private driveways or condominium complexes. The town has also opened self-service disposal areas for residential drop-offs only, not including disposals by contractors. Following locations will be open Monday through Saturday, beginning this past August 13th through August 29th from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's the Quinnipiac Park overflow parking area, the Bartland Park Millings parking lot, and the old transfer station at 1304 Waterbury Road. Larger diameter logs can be taken to the old transfer station location, but must be transported and unloaded via self-service. The entire collection is anticipated to take about 4 to 6 weeks, but we cannot give specific street or neighborhood collection dates as the pace is fully dependent on the amount of debris being placed at the curb. I've included just another reminder that tax bills were mailed at the end of June and that the council previously adopted the 60-day extension. So the date for tax bills to be considered late, just for everyone watching at home, is now October 1st, 2020. Again, taxpayers are encouraged to pay online, by mail, or use the drive-up payment box at the town hall circle in the parking lot to help with social distancing. I've included, again, just a few updates on the Cheshire's COVID-19 expansion of services for our municipal government. A reminder that town hall continues to be open and is available during regular business hours. We have a staff person located just inside the main door who helps manage traffic. Folks are able to visit offices one at a time. And again, typically when someone comes in, we'll call for someone to come down and usually can take care of them in the lobby. And the Cheshire Public Library, again, is open for grab and go pickup of physical books, which began June 23rd. To date, there's been 5,070 items checked out through the grab and go system. It's also available, just so folks know, on the evenings of Mondays and Wednesday evenings and also Saturday mornings. All the orders can be made through the library's online catalog system. The public library has held 177 virtual programs with over 2,944 attendees. And again, at the current moment, the date to allow the public to enter the building is still a little fluid. Will be based on meeting public health guidelines for staff and patron safety. Plans for that reopening phase have been developed and reviewed with Chesapeake. Necessary safety items have been acquired or are on order. And once protocols are in place, the library will self-certify with the state before initiating any public opening of the inside of the building. Also on playgrounds and courts and Mixville Park, all playgrounds and courts have been reopened. Signs are advising folks that anyone with COVID symptoms are not to use the facilities and warn that playgrounds are not sanitized and should be used cautiously. And also the Mixville Park Pass system, which I'm sure a number of the council have been monitoring. It's overall been working very well. We have increased the available permits by about 50% based on actual usage duration and times. Our analysis indicates that at times 30 to 50% of reservations are followed through with an actual visit. So we are seeing some evidence that people are reserving and not using the pass. So we have increased that number to try to accommodate and make sure that as many people can use it safely as possible. Just another reminder that this year we have a new household hazardous waste drop-off system and program. We are contracting with the Regional Water Authority, and folks can dispose of their household hazardous waste at the RWA facility at 90 Sergeant Drive. That season began July 1st and runs through October, and we have more information about that online. And last, the Cheshiretowne historian, Janae Chesnow, is requesting that residents send their observations, stories, photos, drawings, poems, videos, texts, tweets, memos, etc., from this unique pandemic time that we're living in. As Janae said, this is an effort to enable future generations to better understand what has been experienced here in Cheshire in this time of uncertainty. Submissions can be made to CheshireHistorian@gmail.com, and contributions will be shared with the Cheshire Library and Cheshire Historic Society, but only with permission. And that concludes my report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimball. And before Mr. Walsh, I just get to you, I think I speak for all of us and certainly the Cheshire community, offering our gratitude to you and all of your staff, Sean, you and Arnett, and everyone who worked so hard through this storm. You guys did phenomenally well for this community. I can tell you, I think you personally, as the CEO of this corporation, did a great job. Your robocalls were very informative, in my opinion, and I think people welcomed getting them, because when we couldn't get good information from people like Eversource, you were the one shining light, in my opinion, that were giving whatever good information you could to the people of this community. So I personally want to thank you, Sean, but certainly all of your staff, Public Works, the police, Jack Kasner, Human Services, and everybody across the board just rose to the occasion as always. And so thank you all from all of us. We had a lot of frustrations with Eversource. It certainly wasn't with the frontline crew. When they got here, I saw people clapping for those people that came, and I'm glad they did, because they deserved it. Whatever frustrations I think many of us have is probably with the corporate structure of Eversource. And I'm hopeful that maybe enough frustration came through this storm that we can see some changes there. But nonetheless, Sean, you did a great job and your staff did a great job. And I just want to personally commend you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if anyone else has any questions or comments regarding what Mr. Kimball just went through. Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I echo what the chair said. I think the town staff did a tremendous job during this storm. Just a quick question, and I know everybody's asking, do you know when they're going to pick up in my neighborhood? And I know you can't answer that, but I'm just wondering if there is a way that we could post something about what streets have been picked up every few days or something, so that people know, okay, we've already gone through your neighborhood, don't put it out now. I think some way, because I'm sure other people are getting a lot of calls or emails about this, and I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can just at least send them, say, listen, this is the area that they've already done. That way we know, you know, we can't estimate when we're going to be in your neighborhood, but we know that if we've been through your neighborhood.
Sure, we can do that. We actually have a plan in place to do that every so often, as you say. Right now, I can tell you on the west side, they're up to South Brooksvale, that area. Some of the roads that are branching off of that, and on the east side, they're on Fenn Road. They stopped there today. So anything from Mount Sanford up and from Old Lane up has largely been done to those roads.
So
we will update.
Will you be able to post that on the website?
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll look into having either a list or some sort of a map that just kind of shows and shades where we've
Yeah,
been.
I think that would help the people in the town, because there's a lot of cleanup, and people are going to be cleaning up for the next few weeks, and they would need to know whether they need to bring it to the location or if they could put it out in front. One other thing, the 911, I was intrigued to hear, you know, we were taking calls from Plainville. How does that work with the, I mean, how do we start picking up calls from Plainville? I mean, I could see surrounding towns, but how far out do we go?
So from a technical standpoint, I probably can't answer that in terms of how it actually rolls over, but I know that there are a series of fail-safes in the statewide 911 system such that your 911 call doesn't go unanswered, which of course is the worst case. My understanding from talking to Chief Drive is that when it failed and they realized it was going to be a prolonged failure, what ends up happening is an officer from Plainville or Southington or Bristol is actually in our police department and using their radio to radio back the 911 call and where they need to go within their town. So we ultimately had, I think, at 1.77 people, dispatchers and officers working to answer these calls. But in terms of how it actually fails, again, I think it's part of the fail-safe probably working, but why the AT&T system failed and redirected, as I understand it, all 911 calls were just for those towns. We're coming straight to Cheshire.
Oh, wow.
With our two dispatch centers. I mean, we only have two areas seats, so to speak, for dispatch. So it was they did just an incredible job. I know we said it before, we've recognized them, but it can't be underscored enough that to respond that effectively in such a crazy time was really commendable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you.
Ms. Pavano, I think. you
Yes,
had a
thank you,
comment or
Mr.
question?
Chair. Sean, I just wanted to commend you on the work that you did. You kept us as council members so informed. It meant so much because we were totally in the dark, so to speak. Also, the town, all of my neighbors and everyone that I've talked to is so grateful that you sent out as many phone calls as you possibly can, but kudos to the staff and everyone who went over and above. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Any other questions or comments on Mr. Kimball's report? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to reports of committees of the council. Chairman's report, Ms. Nichols.
Personnel is still ongoing with contract negotiations and town managers' goals and objectives. So we're scheduling several meetings in the next couple of weeks. Keep you posted.
Great, thank you. Mr. Slocum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Planning has yet to meet, but we do need to meet. I've asked Arnett to provide me with certain information in advance of that meeting, but I'd like to schedule it hopefully the last week of August. And I'll be getting that out to the members so that we can go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Veliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance will be, I've been working with Melanie, and when Arnett gets back, I'll be talking with her as well. But we do need to meet. We've got a few things on the agenda, and as we'll discuss later, we're going to be adding one more thing to the agenda. So for the ordinance committee, so we are looking to meet. I'm hoping either the last week of August or early September to try to get things back on track and get some of these matters moving. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Mr. Walsh?
Solid waste has not met, but I am assuming that maybe we might be having some meetings soon, if depending on how we're going with everything. So hopefully within the next few weeks, we will have something to talk about in terms of solid waste.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Bari?
Mr. Chairman, you heard all the items for the Budget Committee meeting throughout the meeting tonight, so thank you.
Great, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to 11B miscellaneous. I do have a referral to the Ordinance Committee, as Mr. Veliver just kind of hinted towards, which is related to some concerns we have regarding the short-term leasing of housing in our community. And I think Mr. Veliver, through ordinance, will be taking a look at how we can best protect our residents and property values in light of some of the concerns that have been raised. So I'm happy to make that referral and look forward to collaborating with your committee, Mr. Veliver, as to what, if anything, we can do here to assist in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and with that, we're going to move on to number 12, which is miscellaneous and appointments, liaison reports. I guess I'll start with Ms. Nichols.
No report for liaisons.
And I hope the Brady Bunch boxes don't change, because the only way I could do this is if we keep going. I'm going to go right down the list. Mr. Slocum?
No report.
Thank you. Mr. Veliver?
No report.
Mr. Talbot?
No report.
Mr. Walsh?
No report.
I think we lost Ms. Pavano. I don't see her, but I'm going to ask her. Ms. Pavano?
She's there.
I'm here now.
Any liaison report, Ms. Pavano?
Yes, I just wanted to tell you, the Board of Education teacher's contract has been rescheduled to August 26th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barry?
No further report.
Mr. Walsh, did I get you or no?
Yes, you did. No report.
Okay, and then obviously Mr. Jinks is not here this evening. And with that, we'll go to appointments to boards and commissions. Ms. Nichols?
I have no appointments for boards
Okay,
and commissions.
Mr. Talbot?
Nor do I, Mr. Chair.
Thank you both. We do, I believe, however, have a potential appointment to the School Modernization Committee to fill the
Right.
vacancy of Anne Marie Kemp, who recently resigned. So with that, I guess I'll turn it back to you, Ms. Nichols, if that's okay.
That's fine, thank you. I sit on the School Modernization Committee, and I, like everybody there, is committed to the diversity of skills and expertise of the members and the urgency of having a very full working committee. I would like to ask the council's support for the nomination of Kate O'Donnell to fill the vacancy that's resulting from the resignation of Anne Marie Kemp. My reasons are that she is a very well-respected educator in the town of Wallingford. She's been so for 26 years. She's held the position of Science Technology Curriculum Coordinator for the past 2 years and was Science Curriculum Resource Teacher for 3 years. She's worked at every level from pre-K all the way up through high school in teaching capacity as well as administrative capacities. She was selected in Wallingford for the first innovation team in 2013, and their task was to provide initiatives such as mastery-based learning, and that has changed the landscape of education in Wallingford. She's also served and chaired several district committees. So as a mom, she's a dedicated volunteer. Many of you may have volunteered with things with her. She has 2 sons who graduated, started at Darcy, Norton Dodd. Both graduated Cheshire High School, both in full-time college students. Her husband owns a business in town, and he's an active volunteer in Park and Rec. So I really believe that she will bring professional, educational experience, organizational skills, collaborative energy, and leadership abilities to help the School Modernization Committee accomplish the important and very time-sensitive tasks that we're charged with. So I'm asking you as council members to join me to support her nomination.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. I appreciate that. So as you all know, this is a committee of the council. So any replacements do require a vote of the council. With that, I guess I'll open it up for any questions or comments, and then we'll take a vote. Any
Will there
questions
be
or
a second?
comments, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, do you need a second, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman?
yes, I'm sorry, please, a second.
I'll
I'll be
second.
happy to second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. I think you had talked to her potentially as well as Ms. Nichols about this situation, so I think I'll let you two first and second it.
I'd like to just make a comment. I have worked with Kate on a committee for many years. She's a very organized person. She comes prepared, and I know she will be a huge asset to this committee. I think she can add a lot with her background in teaching and just being part of this Cheshire community for so many years. I think it'll be a great addition to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Those that are here, thank you guys for
Thank you.
bringing that forward. Appreciate that. We're going to move on to Town Attorney Report and Communications. Attorney Smith?
No report.
Okay, then we're going to move on to Council Communications, letters to the council. We have a number of them, and I guess I'll start with the ones that I have, and I think Mr. Veliver, you have one as well. So I'll start with the first one. It says, "Dear Editor," I think this was sent to one of the local papers, but also sent to the council, and I want to make sure that we read it. The derogatory statements about women made by a member of the School Modernization Committee to the council chair following an SMC meeting on June 1st have led to the resignation of the highly qualified chair of that committee, as well as the loss of other contributing members. Matthew Bowman, the individual responsible for making the offensive remarks, has refused to resign from the committee, calling into question his commitment to this town. The School Modernization Committee has spent 9+ months working diligently on behalf of the children of this community. It's a huge loss to this community that the work of the committee was delayed for 2 months while the incident of June 1st was investigated. The important work of this committee is now further hampered by the loss of several valuable members. The The Republican Town Council has issued a condemnation of the statements, but failed to take any further action to stand up for the women on the committee and protect them from this hostility. Instead, many male members of the SMC, some of who are also on the Board of Education or Town Council, chose to defend the offensive statements and shift the blame to women on the committee. The apology offered by Matt Bowman on August 3rd was shallow and angry and quickly shifted to an attack on the female complainants. Those who chose to defend these demeaning statements or minimize their harm are failing to recognize that the actual statements are only a symptom of a larger cultural attitude that diminishes the value and contributions of women just because someone has spent decades participating in volunteer work on behalf of this town does not give them a pass on bigotry. When we as a society determine that some voices are less credible than others, we all lose. Lynn L.V. Dawson. The next letter I have is, Dear members of the Town Council, I'm writing to you regarding the School Modernization Committee and its issue involving a member, Matt Bowman, in a telephone conversation with ex officio member Rob Orris, overheard by others following a meeting in executive session. While the comments overheard were overtly misogynist in nature, that is not the reason for this letter. This letter is to express disappointment in the handling of the situation afterward. Anne Marie Kemp, chair of the SMC, wrote a letter to the Town Council representing the SMC with the approval of all other members and asked for the removal of Mr. Bowman because of the nature of his comments. The SMC, as a committee created by the Town Council, has no power on its own to add or remove any members. The Town Council, upon receipt of this letter, decided that this matter would be handled in executive session. There was an investigation of some sort, and then many weeks later, the council publicly rendered its decision condemning only Mr. Bowman for his comments, but not removing him from the SMC. This process and outcome are problematic for many reasons. First, what is the purpose of creating public committees, supposedly granting them autonomy, but then ultimately deciding against the wishes of the committee itself? The council could and should have placed its confidence in the committee and believed that the committee chair would act in its best interest. By not honoring the chair's request, again made on behalf of the remaining members of the committee, I believe the Town Council negates the value of the work done by the SMC. Second, and I hope that this is not the case, that the Town Council ultimately decide not to take action at the behest of the chair and committee because of the underlying reason for the request. Misogynistic comments directed at and concerning women on the SMC was not deemed important enough to merit removal of the offender. Mr. Bowman and Mr. Orris both thought they were having a private conversation and are entitled to speak however they wish. However, sexism against women is a real issue, and it affects women at home, in the workplace, and in public forums, both real and virtual. In this instance, if all members of the committee are not being treated equally or worse, do not believe that they are or will be treated equally based on another member's speech or behavior, the work of the entire committee itself is compromised. Lastly, I disagree with this issue, and the decision-making process should have been handled exclusively in executive session. I recall it repeatedly said that the purpose of this new committee being created was that it would be a transparency in every aspect of the school modernization process. Apparently, this transparency does not extend to the makeup of the committee itself, neither as to who is asked to serve on the committee, nor who can be removed from the committee. It is my hope that the Town Council will reconsider its decision regarding the School Modernization Committee and take action as initially requested by its chair. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. Marlena Sobel. Okay. I have another letter which came into Arnett Talbot, but sent to us from Ms. Brana Shane. And it says, Dear Arnett, I hope you are doing well during the pandemic and following our recent storm. It was nice speaking with you recently. Tonight, I learned that there may be 2 vacancies on the School Modernization Committee that I applied for in my letter, which she attached dated back in September 2019. If this is the case, I'm wondering if she could still be considered a candidate for these potential openings. So those are the letters that I have, and I think Mr. Veliber, you have another letter?
Turn on your.
There we go.
There.
Amazing. You would think it would be easy after all this time, but so thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm reading this letter. This is from some residents. This goes back to our discussion earlier about the referral to the Ordinance Committee regarding short-term rentals. Dear members of the council, we are writing to ask you for your deliberation regarding a situation that is becoming more commonplace in our town and across our nation. We thank you for your attention to this matter. The residence next to our home is being rented as an Airbnb type property. The Airbnb business model is popular around the globe, and it is a unique way for investors and entrepreneurs to conduct a real estate rental business. While this is a good business opportunity for investors, our experience with having one next to our personal residence is that we feel regulatory measures are needed to balance pure residential areas with Airbnb type income producing properties before they should be allowed to operate unconstrained in historically residential neighborhoods. Our concern specifically pertains to destination Airbnb type properties, which attract large groups of transient renters with high turnover rates. The property adjacent to ours is over 3,000 square feet with an indoor pool advertised to accommodate up to 16 plus people. Its online profile describes it as a group destination-like getaway with said pool and other accommodations for approximately $1,000 per night. It has been quite popular, with constant bookings over the winter, spring, and summer of 2020. Whether this will be permanent demand or instead driven by COVID-19 travel restrictions, it is difficult to tell. The popularity of the property has resulted in one weekly and sometimes daily turnover of a high number of transient occupants, 33 plus guests on August 11th with parked cars as high as 13, 2, elevated noise levels late at night, 3, trash overflows that exceed capacity of the allotted 4 garbage bins, 2 regular and 2 recycling, 4, renters' vehicles driving over and trespassing on adjacent property owners' lawns, 5, pets of renters running free in the neighborhood. We feel that Cheshire Town Management should prohibit this type of activity until it can study and determine that the Airbnb type activity does not interfere with intended use of strictly residential neighborhoods. If town management concludes that this activity is permitted under its zoning laws, we ask that the town establish regulations to dictate how Airbnb type rentals are to operate within its residential neighborhoods. It is our opinion said regulation should focus on minimizing their impact on traditional residential living standards, coupled with a review of safety hazards related to fire, health, and building codes, more akin to high turnover rental facilities than ordinary individual family residences. The goal of these regulations would be to ensure short-term rentals are safe and do not change the intended use of a purely residential area. Lastly, a quick search of the web shows that this situation is not unique to Cheshire and that other Connecticut towns are working through managing Airbnb type rentals in residential neighborhoods. It appears some towns, in response to this growing trend, have enacted special zoning regulations for short-term rentals. Some examples of rules enacted elsewhere include 1, limiting the volume of rentals to just 3 distinct guest groups over a 6-month period. 2, limiting the number of guests in total, specifically focusing on the number of permitted unrelated people staying at the rental property at one time. And 3, requiring hearings and/or special permits be obtained prior to approving the rental period. We are available to discuss this in person if needed. Thank you for your consideration. And then there's a list of residents here. Renee Semino, Bruce Fast. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that one. Catherine and Tyler Bourne, Laura and David Molnar, Mark and Linda Godfrey, Bonnie and Jake Brunner, James and Lynn Martha. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Veliber. Are there any other letters to the council from any other members of the council? Okay, seeing none. And with that, I guess we're going to go back to the only item left, which is executive session to discuss contract negotiations. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Slocum, to take the rest of the group into executive session. I will not be attending executive session in this matter. And with that, I will be checking out. So good night to everybody and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Roras.
Hi, Rob.
Night, Rob.
Okay, good night, Rob. I will ask for a motion to go into executive session to include the town manager, members, and who else? Is there anyone else?
Attorney, town attorney.
Town attorney.
Town attorney. Okay, thank you, Al. Sorry, I missed you. You're stuck in the canyon there.
Yeah.
So,
I'll second that.
okay.